Hello and welcome to the Meaning Project podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Daniel A. Franz. As always, thank you for this opportunity to bring a little bit of mental health and meaning to your day. Today, I am joined by new good friend whom I believe we just met last year. But I tell you, we became fast friends. And when I got the email from your assistant last week, hey, Shiraz wants to get together and swap podcasting, and I said, absolutely, without a doubt. And usually, my timing is a couple weeks out, or I like to slow things down and plan. And she's like, how about next week? And absolutely. Shiraz, how you doing, my friend? It's good to see you again.
I'm excited I'm always excited for a number of reasons, but how am I doing? Christmas and New Year's is firmly set in the rear view mirror, and there's so much in store. I like alliteration, but there's so much in store in 2024 to just go and get more, but it's not more of new, it's more of the same. But if you don't love the same, man, it's easier. It's just so easy to blame God for like, hey, my life is kind of mundane, but I love getting into depths of the same, like 2.0s and 3.0s. So when you ask me how I'm doing, I'm excited about getting into my 2.0s and 3.0s of the very same thing that God has created me to be.
I think that's a beautiful statement, right? If you're not happy with the same, right? Wow, if you're not, then you should be doing something different. You should be figuring out what your purpose is and grab a hold of it and follow that. If you're not happy with what you're doing every day, I agree. There's life to be lived out there, and if you're not happy doing it, you got to find a way to. So let's I was going to start with one idea, but the fact that you brought up alliteration and your
Okay.
book, what I consider to be an inspirational and quite honestly life-changing book. Well done. A passionate pursuit of purpose. I almost didn't get all those P's out. This is a book I read after we met. I seriously, it takes me a little while to digest a book because usually I got five over here and 10 over here. You see all those back there. I've got
Yeah,
multiple
yeah.
ones going. Well done. A passionate pursuit of purpose. I got through in less than a week. I woke up early every morning, excited to read it. I came home from work every night, excited to dive a little bit deeper into it. And then I got a copy for my wife, both my daughters. I'm referring all of my clients to this book. It is, as I said, inspirational and what I feel is truly life-changing. Can you talk about the book, what inspired you to write it? Where did this masterpiece come from?
Well, first of all, thank you for validating, and you know this having being the author of more than one book, the work that goes into it. You actually don't write it to be an author, and if you're writing a book to be an author, uh, it might not go well. But if you're
So
writing
true.
it because someone else can potentially benefit for it, and you're writing it for someone else, man, it just changes everything about it. That journey to get to to get to the finish line uh took a few years, but it did take my wife to be able to say, "Are you finally going to do this?" And I think one of the purposes that it serves is, see, in a Christian context, there is always this warm embrace, but I kind of love the right foot of fellowship as well.
Mm.
And I think sometimes we need a swift kick in love to get going. And I think the struggle for me with writing this book is massaging that kick so it didn't hurt too much, but pokes and pricks enough for people to pursue something greater because they're feeling that tickle inside themselves anyways.
Yeah, so there's a great line from that great idea that sometimes we need that little kick, right? And you make a statement in the book, right? Faith isn't a guarantee that our desired outcomes will immediately bear fruit, but we demonstrate our faith by getting back up, even if we fail, even if we fail, same thing, because we believe that that inherent in every setback is a new way to attack the challenge. How many times did you fall before you got here? Or how many kicks did you need? And this is a question a lot of people I work with, a lot of my listeners really, we fall, we fail, we struggle, and there's no guarantee that we're going to succeed. But if we believe there's faith that we'll keep going.
Uh, a good friend we have in common, Dr. Chris.
Hmm.
Uh, she, as you know, in health and wellness. And in a conversation with her months ago, she said this to me. She said, Shiraz, most people I know that want to, for example, lose weight, they know what to do,
Mhm.
but it's a matter of actually doing it.
Mhm.
And in again, a church context, this is what I firmly believe, we're educated beyond our ability to implement. It's like there's this spiritual constipation happening where there's a lot going in,
Mhm.
and we enjoy the going in part because it's sensational to our taste buds. We're tasting the salty, the sweet, the sour. We're getting all these flavors and notes. So, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing. Unless it's converting and coming out the other end into productivity in our own lives, that constipation is a problem.
Mhm.
The pursuit of knowledge is powerful, but the application of wisdom in our lives so other people can benefit from is actually the core reason for input.
I think that's such a powerful idea, and I recognized in myself before very strongly. Um, you know, I was at a point of just consuming information more and more and more. And I got to read this book and I got to check out this podcast and I've got to get these ideas in my head. When I knew the idea for the Meaning Project podcast, the Viktor Frankl Meaning Academy, and the courses we're offering, they were there. They had to come to fruition. And I just remember, I believe it was a few years ago, I was on the cusp of of course, more resolutions or goals. And it was about, oh, I got to get more information. And one morning I woke up and said, stop, quit reading everything, put that stack of books away and start creating. Get up
Okay.
and do something.
Okay. Yeah. Well, here we are. Do something,
Mhm.
and we're recording this session, early 2024, and we all know what happened when that clock struck midnight, and people were probably planning and curating the creative ways in which they're going to conquer in 2024.
Mhm.
And we set out our goals. And one of the things that happens with those resolutions, those January resolutions, sometimes lead to February funerals.
Mm,
And,
absolutely.
and so we're so amped up about our goals and our objectives about what we could and should perhaps do. I think early in December, it's just when God impresses upon me. I'm been trying to share this with as many people as possible, so I'm going to share this with your audience as well. Perhaps this year is not about the resolutions that we make, but the revelations that God gives us about what our next steps should be. Because if we pursue the revelatory nature of what God unfolds as a lamp unto our feet, that changes the equation because now we're pursuing something that has God's wind and backing, not just great and good things, but God things. Because resolutions, look, there's nothing wrong with resolutions. But what if you are more resolved and resolute about the revelation about who you are?
Mm.
It just adds so much more of God power to drive us forward in this year.
I want to talk more about that idea of revelation, but I want to just confirm what you're saying because a lot of what I've been talking about, a lot of what my partner, Dr. Bean, we share with our audiences that, it's not about new year, new you. It's about new year,
Okay.
true you. Get to the real you.
Ooh,
Become the
ooh,
person you are.
I gotta write that down. That's really good. That's really good stuff.
I have to admit, I don't think I'm the one that came up with it. I think he said it, and I just took it, and I've been running with it. But to your point, and I love the alliteration of February funerals. I believe there's some good psychological research out there that around today, this very week, is when most resolutions die, and we bury them a couple weeks later. So if your resolution has died, it's okay. To the quote I'd shared from the book previously, if you fell, what are you going to get up and do? And to Shiraz's point, let's talk about this idea of revelation. How do we find the true you? How do we open ourselves up to see what needs to be revealed?
Yeah, so there's this scene that shook my life to the core. And so I've pastored at a couple of different churches in my life. And sitting there in church one day, and there's a passage in Matthew 7 and Matthew 25 where they the author is expounding on judgment scenes.
Mm.
And it, for the first time, hit me between the eyes when God says, "Depart from me, I knew you not." But
Mm.
what's astounding about it is he's not saying that to an atheist. He's not saying that to someone who isn't of the way. He's not saying that to a non-believer.
Mm.
These are people who do charitable acts, and they refer to him by saying, Lord, Lord. So these were Christians. As a matter of fact, I love the one person who chimes in there and he says, God, what's up? You know who I am? I cast out demons in your name. What? I am super Christian.
Mm-hmm.
Look, if you go to a church and there's that prayer warrior who's laying hands on people and demons are flying all over, you're considered like, whoa, that person has a lot of the anointing of God on his life, right? And this person tries to make that boast and claim to God. See, what looked good in church might not look good in eternity.
Mm-hmm. I
And so
love that
there's
idea.
this thought then that what does look good in eternity versus look good here on earth? Philippian, I think 2 Timothy 3:5 says it this way, having a form of godliness, but denying the power thereof. It's like this look-alike purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And we're pursuing something that might look like, but it's a form of.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the trap there when we're talking about resolutions and revelation is beginning to discern the difference between what is a great thing and what it is exactly that God needs us to do, because charitable works and casting out demons, those are great things, but they didn't qualify those people for eternity. So what does?
It's a great question. What does? And in our modern times, right, we are so busy being busy that we think
Mm.
we're doing great things. And yet, there's my belief. We feel that we know something inside in all of our busyness, in all of our running about, feeling that we're doing things with intention and purpose. Sometimes we just know there's something else, something greater, maybe it's not even greater, maybe something lesser, but there's something else we should be doing. How do we use the word discern? I love that word. How do we discern that?
Uh, in the 1940s, there are two researchers, Tinbergen and Lorenz, they studied the behavior of the gray lag geese. I didn't even know there was such a animal that existed, but they did, and they do. And what's really neat is this bird was very diligent about its eggs because it was very careful. Look, fundamental principle: be careful what you nurse and make sure what you're incubating, because you need to make sure that it's what God intends you to hatch, because we will birth what we're hatching. We will birth what we're thinking. And so to be careful about the differences when you're discerning look-alike purpose versus, well, I'll continue with what Tinbergen and Lorenz, their study revealed, is that when the gray lag geese was incubating its eggs, if one happened to roll away, it would immediately go like this with his neck, cranking its neck. And they're trying to, okay, what are they doing?
Mhm.
Well, what it was doing was reaching with its beak and beginning the process of pulling it back in to the nest. Okay. So what they did was they placed a golf ball close to the nest, not the actual egg that it's supposed to nurse, incubate, and hatch into reality, but a lookalike. And it
Mhm.
would put a golf ball. Guess what the gray lag geese would do? Immediately, it'd crank its neck. And it would try to pull in anything that just simply looked like, give me hope and a reason. And in this world where sometimes we're just looking for a reason to activate and enlighten our purpose, to feel like we mean something, we'll do anything to just pull, even if it's a golf ball, but it's not exactly. They went as far as putting a white bowling ball that weighed 3 times the amount of one of these geese, or sorry, 2 times the amount, And it would even try to pull it in because you know what? I got to hatch anything and everything that kind of looks like my purpose. Now, how do you tell the difference? I'd like to ask you a question, Dr. Dan. Do you still know 100% beyond a shadow of a doubt that the meaning project is what you're supposed to be doing?
No, most days, most days, but there are days, sometimes there's doubt.
And Hebrews 11 celebrates I'm sure you've heard this term as well in the past. It's the Hall of Fame of the heroes of faith. It's the Faith Hall of Fame,
Hmm.
where it goes on to describe all the greats of the Old Testament and how they overcame adversity. And each time it's a by faith, so and so did this, and by faith, they did that. Sometimes we really just don't know. And let's be sure about this because we don't want to sound like we have it figured out. So when you're asking about discernment, if we know, then we eliminate the concept and construct of what faith means.
That's a great point.
And that gap
Sometimes,
between 90 and 105% going beyond the finish line. Again, we live in an eternal destination, so we go beyond 100, a different conversation. But that gap between 90 and 105, if we already know that answer, then we don't need faith. And so, can we know 100%? But the beauty of it is, instead of calling it faith, a different, one of the ingredients is faith is trust.
mhm,
Can you just trust that God has the other 10% figured out and then go for it? Because without it, I mean, when Peter jumped out of that boat, he was probably 99% trust and 1% sure. But if you read through Hebrews 11, the great things that they did, it every single time, it wasn't, well, this is what I know my purpose is because I was fasting and praying and now I went to do it. A lot of those times, if you read it, it was by faith, Rahab helped the spies and it was accredited to her.
mhm.
By faith, Abraham went into the desert, not knowing. By faith, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, but they said, even if. We don't know how this turns out, but you know what? I got a sense that I got to chase my faith more than my resolution.
Hmm. Hmm. Okay. So I say this often, and your geese story confirms this. We live in a world that drives us, pushes us, wants us to feel meaningless, pointless, purposeless. We are sold a bill of goods on a daily basis on the internet, on TV, on social media, in the world, that you need to be more, do more, acquire more, make more, that you're never good enough. We live in a world full of golf balls and bowling balls that we constantly crane our neck to try and get. But if we have faith, right? We know, well, my question for you, how do we know, where do we find the faith to know what is our egg and to push away the golf ball or bowling ball of meaninglessness?
Okay. I'm going to approach this long road, but you'll see where I'm going with this. We fortunate to be a part of this young lady, her life. Her name is Chantel Riley. She was doing her opening night on Broadway, Lion King. She was Nala in Lion King on Broadway. So my family, we went down there for opening night. We're loving it. We're hanging out with her, and her billboard comes across like right Times Square, and we're loving this moment, right? And she's like in the center of God's will. She's loving it. She gets to dance and sing, and all the gifts within her she gets to. And so we are sitting on the patio of a restaurant in New York City, and you can imagine when like she sings, she dances, she's got to stay in shape, right? So she's getting a lot of attention from guys walking by, and she gets really annoyed, like really annoyed. She said, "Can like I'm just sitting here." So she had changed after the show. We're having a meal. She's like, "I'm just sitting here in my sweats, and they still won't leave me alone. Just trying to chill with my family." like us, right?
Mm.
And my wife looked over and said, "Hey, hon, uh, when you're fit, it doesn't matter what you wear on the outside." And so there's this designer fig leaf that we tried to add to make ourselves look more appealing from the outside. I think that journey begins on the inside because when you're fit on the inside, the outside just kind of
Mm.
looks better. You can wear jogging pants, but if you're fit, it's going to look good on you. And so when you're full of purpose on the inside, no matter what happens on the outside, everything just kind of looks good on you because you look happy, because you inherently are. So to answer the question, um, I think the work begins on the inside. What makes you tick? You see, everybody was born, okay. Um, some people are really good with math. Some people should never delete that calculator app off their phone.
I can relate. That's this guy
Okay.
here. Absolutely. Use it daily.
Some people are great artists. I know for myself, I stopped at stick figures, right? And I might have even got a C on my project, even with just simple stick figures. Like that's how bad my artistic renditions were. Some people are great with computers. Some people are great with. I honestly believe that God has given us the cues and the cues, but He's also given us a shovel.
Mm.
And the way that I've been able to help folks with this is, are you willing to put in the work to figure it out? Because if God gives you a hill and says there's gold in that hill, is it enough that He gave you the hill?
Mm. Got to have that shovel.
Now, what are you going to do about it? See, listening in to say, hey, how do I discern, might be in the power of your shoulder to get the shovel in the ground to start moving some stuff out of the way to get to the goodness of God.
Mhm.
But why would He, meaning God, just say, silver platter, here you go? I think He enjoys when we struggle and we wrestle through it. I think there's something great that happens within us because if I put my shovel in the ground on a daily basis, the strength that builds up with me, the character that develops, because when I find it, oh God, will I celebrate it in your presence? Oh God, will I say, oh my gosh, this is so much more sweeter. So if we are supposed to be the ones who are more enlightened to enlighten others,
Mhm.
okay, what if our purpose is just simply being a GPS and hand them a shovel?
Mhm.
And so I'm not on this call with you to say, hey, here are the answers. I'm saying, hey, here's a shovel, but are you willing to do the work, the dirty work in the dirt where no one sees or seems to care? But will you care enough about your eternity?
And I'll tell you, Shiraz, that's where I am often accused of being a very frustrating therapist. When people come to me and say, okay, what's the answer, doc? And I say, I don't know. Let's talk about it and figure it out. Let's get there. Let's discern it. Let's figure out what your struggle is so that we know what you need to achieve through that. It's amazing. You and I are saying the same thing in different languages with different backgrounds, but we're getting to the same point. You got to struggle. You know, the human existence is suffering and struggling, but boy, can we turn it into something amazing. We can find that gold in that mountain.
Yeah. And there's a sense, was man designed for Eden, or was Eden created to develop the gifts and talents within Adam and Eve? The Adam
Mm.
and Eve didn't even really know what they were capable of, which was limitless, but they would have only known what their capacities and competencies were through experimentation,
Mhm.
through hard work,
Mhm.
and curiosity.
Mhm.
And there's space in the kingdom for your imagination and your creativity and your curiosity.
Mhm.
There's space for all the dreams and the desires, but it doesn't look like, yeah, you're right, because it doesn't look like the cookie cut way that perhaps is worked for others might not work for you.
Yeah, it comes to a point I talk about often. You have to try and you have to keep trying. And for every time you try, I pray for you that you fail a couple times because then right? That's one path you shouldn't have been going down. Or maybe you were on the right path, but we're taking the wrong step. And so you got to step back, recalibrate, re-engage, and get back after it. So there are no, and to your point, faith means it gives us the power when we fall to get back up and keep trying and to figure out, am I on the right path? Do I need to have a totally different path? Or do I need to just adjust the GPS? Do I need a new shovel? Do I need to sharpen the shovel? And that's why we
Okay.
have
Okay.
each other. That's why we have people
Yeah.
to bounce these ideas around. Podcasts like this, podcasts like yours. And of course, the other point I want to get to is the Christian Business Harvest Network and how you came to found that.
Kind of neat. March 2020, as we all experienced the global shutdown.
Hmm.
Close friend of mine actually was on the phone with him, praying with him just this morning as well. And that was the genesis. He's like, Shiraz, I'm a mortgage broker. There's no movement. Nobody's buying or selling anything. I got zero. I'm 100%. You know that I'm 100% commission. It's always worked, but now it's not working. What the heck are we going to do? So we started praying, and regularly we're getting on the phone. We're praying. In the next 4 weeks, he made more money in that 4 week period than he had in any 4 week period in his 10-year career. And that was what, almost 4 years ago. And it's kind of like Isaac was blessed in a season of famine. So this is what happens. Thursday, we would always get together Thursday at 7 p.m. and jump on with him. But there's 3 or 4 of his friends on there. He introduced me. And one of them, like they're sheepishly, like, oh. Then one of them just straight out asked, can you pray for us the way that you prayed for Les? That was one of the top 3 moments that I've been offended in my life. I was so bothered by that comment. I was like, look, what do you think this is? First of all, I have no snake oil. I am not the answer. I do not have that type of power. So let's get this right. But if you come back next Thursday, I'll show you in the word what we prayed for his business so you can begin to sharpen your own shovel, to take your phrase, Dr. Dan, to sharpen your own shovel because you got to put it in the ground on a regular multiple times on a daily basis.
Hmm.
So let's do that. And that was the genesis of CBHN, where it just gave everybody the opportunity to put the shovel in the ground, but have it be more sharper and to have a more clear GPS for those who are pursuing more for their career and or their business. So every Thursday night, we get together a bunch of people who are passionate about using their 9 to 5 to glorify God.
That's beautiful. I quite tongue in cheek have to ask. You mean, wait, prayer is not a magical snake oil just to get your wishes fulfilled. What are we missing here?
Uh, I think most people have had great relationships in their wife, and if you're listening in right now and you're married, um, try to go a day or two without communicating with your spouse. Just like shut them out. Go ahead. I dare you. I dare you to shut them out for 48 hours. Go ahead. See how that goes. And
Right.
yet, the most powerful relationship that we could ever have, we're saying, hey, God, I'll get to you. Imagine saying that to your spouse. I'll get back to you for 48 hours. Imagine 72 hours. Prayer absolutely is that opportunity. Absolutely is to just touch base. How you doing, God? Uh, I would ask you to those listening in right now, talk to God and just ask him, hey God, what's up? What are you up to? Or will he always and perpetually be that concierge that you can go to and order your show tickets and ask him for less traffic and better weather? And so he's just supposed to wave his wand because God is a magic wand, of course.
Right.
Sarcasm, my apologies. I'll pull back from that. Or can we just like hang out and talk to him?
Hmm.
And so it just changes when it's just simply prayer as communication versus prayer as a request.
Yeah, so often I've heard him accused of being the bearded sky wizard who grants wishes. So
Ooh,
two,
ooh.
yeah. So right. So when we
I mean,
when
is
we
that why your beard is coming in real
that's
nice?
exactly, I'm working on becoming more godly. Absolutely. No,
Are-
Shiraz. It's because it is really cold here, just like it is for you as well, I'm sure. But um, no, the point, when we go through life with this image of a bearded sky wizard that grants wishes, well, prayer doesn't work. It never, it didn't give me what I wanted. We cut ourselves off from so much more, from a better relationship with each other, with the powers greater than ourselves, with God. And we it's just a very unfortunate and limiting belief. And so to engage in these things, last week we were talking about I'm not sure if you follow American football or college football, the University of Michigan quarterback, Mr. J.J. McCarthy, engaged in meditation and prayer before each game, publicly on the field, um, without without shame and without trying to hide it. And so he was not looking for the bearded sky wizard that granted wishes, but he recognized that when I just, say, hey, what's up? When I have this openness, good things can happen.
It's, Jason Romano, he runs a fabulous show called Sports Spectrum in a magazine,
Hmm.
and I was hanging out with him the other day. He so he's gone to World Series, Super Bowls, interviewed like top athletes across the world, really. And I was challenging him on one thing. So he's a bit of a basketball aficionado, and we're talking about the Indiana Pacers in
Hmm.
the late 90s. They had a point guard named Mark Jackson. Now, Mark
Hmm.
Jackson is now a pastor of a church and a broadcaster. Uh, so he's on the Pacers. Now they're playing the Knicks, the New York Knicks. And the New York Knicks have a player on their team called out, set apart, just great man of God named Charlie Ward.
Hmm.
And I guarantee they both were praying before their basketball game, right? And question I posed to him was simply, whose prayer does God or should God answer? Because if they're both, you know, praying, whose prayer? And he said, most times these athletes understand enough to not pray for winning or losing, but they pray for God's protection and his will to be done.
Absolutely.
Then they go ahead and put in the work necessary
Hmm.
because their shovels are out.
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
live with shovels in their hand
Hmm.
and they just get to work.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the message that we're looking at today. Is sometimes you just got to get to work, no matter how many times you fall. And back to the quote, and to have faith that something's going to work out.
The last quote that I'll share, and I want to pull it up because I want to make sure I get this right. Eric Hoffer is his name, and I want to make sure I get this quote right. But one of the fearful things about prayer, Dr. Dan, is what if God actually answers the other line and he says hello, and then he starts to talk.
Hmm.
See, we're willing to say, "Hey, God, what's up? Can you?"
Hmm.
But if God answers the other line and then he says, "Son, I got you. Daughter, I got you. Can you?" And then all of a sudden there is a demand or an ask of us because it's relational, right? And so now it's symbiotic. So we're saying, God, can you? And God also says, not in response, it's not a conditional thing. He's just saying, oh, yeah. And by the way, you just grab the milk. Uh,
Hmm.
can you do something like, because we're a family, right? Like, can you just, and so it's really interesting. This is what Eric Hoffer says. He says, people will cling to an unsatisfactory way of life rather than change in order to get something better for fear of getting something worse. Because that change, because prayer changes things, but
Hmm.
what if it makes things a little harder?
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
that's, I think, what both Dr. Dan and I are talking about today. What if doesn't matter, but what's worse is what if you stay the same and did nothing about it?
Yeah, yeah. It's
What if we
I'm
live?
just struck with that exact thing happening yesterday in my office. Sorry, go ahead. There was
No,
just
no, go
such a
for it.
powerful
Go for
statement.
it. Go for it.
I see it too often. I see it just, it's easy to stay stuck in what is comfortable rather than to ask for what can be better.
And so we hang out with what we're used to.
Hmm.
And then we're wondering why there's this, what's that? Stale odor around us. Oh,
Hmm.
it's stale. Yeah, yeah. It is. There's nothing wrong with having milk every day, but go get some fresh milk. There's nothing wrong with being the same right off the top. We talked about, hey, look, most people, if you're listening right now, you probably already have a strong sense of who you are and what you are. We're not saying throw it away and start from scratch and have a new beginning. If that is you, then that's great. But if it's not you, because you already have a sense of who you are and what you're supposed to do, what if it's a season of refreshing?
Hmm.
What if you just take inventory and oh wait, that there is an expiration date on the way that I was doing it. That milk smell, ooh, that milk is pretty bad. Let's get rid of the milk and just go get a fresh carton of milk. It might not be rip and replace. It might be restore. It
Hmm.
might be repair. It might be your 2.0 moment.
Yeah, yeah. That is perfect because I wanted to make sure we got this quote in because it's probably one of my no, I had a lot of favorites. When I went back into my Kindle, I believe I had 45 favorite quotes from your book, and it really struck me. But this one, I know there are people listening that need to hear this. So I'd like you to comment on it. I'd like to just share the power of this statement from your book. Have you committed murder? Moses did. Have you committed adultery? David did. Have you walked away from Jesus? Peter did. Reframe what you used to be and what you used to do as simply something that built your character and caused you to course correct. Our past prepares us for our potential. Oh, man. Sometimes you got to go get fresh milk. Sometimes when you recognize just how stale and bad that milk is, maybe how how bad you may have behaved at some point, it's okay to refresh. It's okay to go back because there are people throughout history that have done far worse and have risen to do far better.
You're asking me to comment on that. You know this,
Sorry, I
Dr.
left you a little
Denver.
speechless there.
You did.
Our
Um,
past prepares us for our potential. I just think that's so powerful. And to give those examples, I mean, characters throughout history, the greats from the Bible made mistakes. We make mistakes. We're human, but we get to course correct, as you say. We get to refresh. We get to throw out the stale milk and become, well, as we said in the beginning, not new year, new you, new year, true you.
through going through this process of writing this book, I knew that I didn't. When you're at 45, like it's you didn't highlight something that I wrote, but I honestly know that I partnered, I sacrificed, I paid a price
Hmm.
to get even one. When you read that, I'm feeling it like I'm hearing it for the first time. And I'm evaluating my life for the last few months and saying, it's all right, Shiraz. It's all right. It's all right. Let's go. And if you're listening in, as you listen in right now, it's all right. Whatever has or hasn't been, it doesn't matter unless you make it matter. And that's a choice. And that's your choice. And we all have a choice to make on how we frame or reframe our past.
Yeah.
It can either hurt or help us. It can either be a bridge to greatness or it can be a wall to keep us out. Our past is simply a door, but we have to choose, was that door there to keep us in or to let us out? And if you were to look back at the learnings that happened through the failings that you went through, God was just trying to show you where the doorknob is. And I don't, I'm not a, I won't say I bet you. I won't say I promise you. I won't say I assure you. But I got a strong sense that if you look back at anything that would be deemed as a failure, a falling, you'll find the doorknob in it. You'll find the doorknob. And I think if anything that we're taking into our future, it's about how to find the doorknob to get us into something, not keep us out of something.
Oh, that is beautifully stated. So much goodness we've covered here today. I definitely want to encourage everybody, please go pick up a copy of Well Done, A Passionate Pursuit of Purpose. Shiraz, it's truly a blessing to be able to hang out with you and have this kind of conversation. Like I said in the beginning, when May asked me, I said, absolutely. How many times can we do it? 10 times in a week? Because it is just such a wonderful experience. Where can people find out more about you and the Christian Business Harvest Network and connect with you?
Yeah, welldonebook.info.
Mhm.
Again, that's welldonebook.info. The easy way is it's available, and you can connect with me there as well. But the easy way is Amazon. It's kind of neat, and you would have experienced this as well, Dr. Dan, when the book is selling in Brazil, Florida, Canada, Australia, India, and the Philippines. It's just gone. You just put your seed out there and you cast your bread upon the water and just let's see what God does with it. It's making an impact when people are, going back and buying the book again
Mhm.
to share with others. So, look, I want to just be very careful, and I would love to repeat this if you indulge me here, Dr. Dan. This is not about Shiraz, the author. This is literally about you. And I love the way that Dr. Dan said this. He said, "Hey, whatever you need to sharpen your shovel, if this book can serve that purpose as simply being a shovel sharpener, then God bless you. Go ahead, because it doesn't matter about the book. What matters is will it sharpen your shovel? We think it will, but there's other tools. And if you're listening to this podcast with Dr. Dan, let me give him not a plug, but a reality here. He is also a shovel sharpener. And so connect with people and with resources that will sharpen your shovel. So every place that you put, when God says that every place that the soles of your feet shall tread upon, he's given to you as an inheritance. Well, then go take possession over the land like only you can, because God called us to take dominion. And our prayer is not only that you would heal and come out. Look, it might not be your fault that you feel buried, but it is your responsibility to heal and come out. It might, for some of us, it's shovel in the ground. For some of us, it might be shovel scraping dirt off of us to get out and to come out. But come out, come forth, do it in the name of the Lord, do it in the name that God has given you, because your name matters in eternity.
I can't end any more beautifully than that. Uh, I will now add shovel sharpener to my resume.
There you go.
And I love that idea, right? If you're out there listening, you are out there listening, and you need your shovel sharpened, grab a copy of the book, give me a call, connect with me, connect with somebody that you know will help you sharpen your shovel, because there's greatness for you out there. You are meant to do amazing things. I've said that in different ways. Shiraz is saying that today. And obviously, you listen to this podcast for a reason, and you're here today listening for a reason. Get that shovel sharpened and go out there and do amazing things. Shiraz, always a pleasure. Thank you so much. I can't wait for an opportunity to connect again.
Thank you.